What's up, everybody? Happy Friday evening. Welcome to the Week 13 episode of the TLR Roundtable. Wow, tongue-tied already. Off to a good start. It's been one of those weeks. Hope everybody had a good week and is ready for a great weekend. We're obviously here to take some Discord questions, some Twitter questions. We're going to do some bad tweets, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about some of the struggles the Chargers are having, particularly on offense, and how they can attack those. I know there are a couple questions about that, so we'll get a little bit into the Chiefs game and some more broad stroke things. But before we get started, Craig, how are you doing? How was your week?
Pretty good, man. Same as you. Lots going on between family and work. In my industry, end of year is always super busy. So been burning it at both ends, but this is my release, man. Happy to be able to do this every week, so it helps me get through it.
Same. It's always been a good release for me too. So let's go ahead and get that release started. We're going to start off with some Discord questions. We've got a few good ones this week. I see people talking about rubbing their nipples in the chat, and that's a little scary.
Hey, so I thought when I said release, we were going to get paused to hell. But now that I'm seeing what's going on in the chat, we're safe, man. It's nothing compared to that stuff.
All right. So first question is from J.K. Pavlanian. I know I butchered that, and I'm sorry. You'll have to forgive me. I'm not very good with names, as everybody well knows. So I figured we kind of get right into one of the biggest issues the Chargers are having. It's something we talk about seemingly every week. Yep. And we got reports this week that the Chargers are really struggling with man coverage. We're seeing more and more of that. And Ladd is really the only Charger wide receiver who can consistently beat man coverage. So JK says, besides adding competent wide receivers to the roster, what are the Chargers' best ways to beat man coverage or discourage defenses from playing man? Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, so this is absolutely the kryptonite in the passing game right now. So as far as I'm concerned, what I think they would need to do is you pretty much got to create mismatches, and that's probably got to come through scheme. So, like, for instance, you can come out in like personnel packages that'll help dictate defensive personnel, and then maybe audible, say, from like a condensed set into something more spread out and get linebackers matched up on receivers. It'd be great if they had a legit pass catching tight end, because then they could exploit that. But hey, it's not really what's going on right now. You could also run like bunch sets to help create natural picks. Out of that, you can run like some quick hitters from those sets. So screens, drag routes, maybe like a whip route. Basically anything that will cause defenders to make like unintentional contact with your receivers or the DBs. So force them to get caught up in the trash. You got to get really creative when you're not able to naturally create that separation. So it just comes to scheme. And basically Greg Roman's going to have to really be doing his homework this week in order to do that in general, because the passing game is struggling, and teams that are strong in man coverage will be able to shut this wide receiving core down. So you just got to get super creative, and you have to be efficient.
Yeah, so Craig mentioned some good ideas. I have some other ideas. Bunch formations, tray formations, stack formations, things where you have multiple wide receivers and in a condensed area where you can create some natural picks. And like Craig said, force corners to communicate, to pass guys off, to navigate the trash, to play through contact, and create some of those picks in space instead of closer to the line of scrimmage, I think could really help. The Chargers use bunch formations, but it seems like a lot of their bunch formations are more condensed, meaning closer to the line, as opposed to spread out away from the offensive line. So if you could get them out wide, maybe, outside the hash marks, potentially outside the numbers or between those two areas, and spread them out and create some of those picks, that could really help. Slants are a good way to beat man coverage. You can run a lot of like smash and hitch routes, deep slants, deep crossers to create picks and create confusion in the middle of the defense. Wheel routes out of that bunch formation where you have the inside guy curl around somebody who's running a slant or a post or something off his outside hip. Those are good ways to create space in the passing game and challenge man coverage. So those are all really ways that you can do that. The slot fade is another good way to beat man coverage. Um, and then, the other way too is, and it's worked in recent weeks, not so much last week against the Falcons, but if you can run for big chunk plays with Herbert against man coverage with all those defenders having their back to the ball, that could really help as well. So, ideally, you'd like to see Herbert recognize that man coverage, especially when they're seeing it as often as they are, and maybe not hold the ball so much, but get out of the pocket earlier and use his legs earlier in the play, um, and kind of force them to play more man cover or zone coverage, and have their eyes on the football more. So I think those are all ways that you can go about challenging man coverage. It's got to start with formations. They've got to get a little bit more creative. And then also, one I failed to mention is motion. Motion is a really good way to beat man coverage. You can put Lad in motion, put QJ in motion, so it's harder to get hands on him. Have him move one way across the formation, and then have him double back and snap the ball as he's running laterally. Some of those orbit motions that you see could help with that. And you got to be able to run the ball too.
Yeah, sure.
All those
Well, you
things.
know who does that a lot, actually? So I was watching the Lions-Packers games. I feel like 75% of the Lions offense, they run motions. And you could see how effective it was, because even just that eye candy will take attention away from like your primary target on the play. You've got guys having to address whoever. Well, first of all, it helps you declare what the defense is doing, whether or not it's a man or zone. But also, you could use someone as a decoy when you motion them. And again, the defense's eyes may shift to that particular player, and maybe do that for Ladd so that you can create some opportunities for other wide receivers. Because as much as we love Ladd, I mean, the guy can only do so much.
Yeah, you got to find a way to get other people involved. Getting Darius Davis involved in some of those orbit motions and things like that, or at least maybe using Lad in orbit motion to get Davis freed up in space would be a good idea. Like I said, doing that for QJ to give him kind of a head start to where guys can't get their hands on him early in the rep would be really helpful. And, frankly, another team that's always been really good at using space and motion to their advantage is the Chiefs. I mean, Andy Reid is a master at it. It's one of the big takeaways from watching them on film is they've always got somebody in motion. When Tyreek Hill was there, it was usually him, and they use the motion to get him out into space, to create space, and they always use the wide part of the field to their advantage to get guys open against man coverage. So all good ways to go about that. I'm sure these are all things that Greg Roman is well aware of. We'll see if he figures out a way to employ some of those things, but those are just a few ideas.
Yeah.
Next this is from Leobo. He says, any thoughts on Ben Herbert? He was hailed as the cure for the Chargers injury bug, but it seems the issue has gotten worse, at least in regards to the number of players on IR. So I'll start with this one. I'm not sure that I really agree with this. I know guys are getting hurt. And it's something we always say, and it still rings true. This is a physical game, and guys are going to get hurt. But the question is, really, how much money do you have on the IR? Meaning, how much of your cap space is on the IR? How quickly are those guys getting back? So we've seen some guys go on the IR and make their way back during the season, which in previous seasons, guys would go on the IR and just stay there. So I feel like he's getting guys back really quickly and they're doing a good job of managing injuries and kind of identifying and figuring out which ones are serious and which ones aren't. So I don't think they're doing a bad job. I don't think things have gotten worse. They've had guys that have been dinged up for sure. But like I said, it's a contact sport. Guys are going to get hurt. It's just part of the game. There's no way to avoid it. There is no such thing as a head trainer who's going to prevent injuries in the NFL game. Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, we see this similarly. I don't necessarily agree either. I mean, to me, just from what I've seen, it seems that Chargers have suffered like far fewer, of course, season-ending injuries and those long-term injuries as well than they have in recent years. I mean, Ben Herbert's aim was to make the team harder to break, not invincible. That's not really a thing. So I would say that to this point, he succeeded. And overall, the team has been, Pretty decent in that regard as far as health is concerned. So, in years past, we've had guys that are high level players that for some reason or another can't seem to stay on the field for extended periods of time. Like even Joey Bosa, we know he's been out a bunch this year, but even he's been able to perform through injuries. He still hasn't been the high level player that we've been looking for him to be, but he's still been on the field and contributing. And you see that he's able to play through some of this stuff and not further harm himself to put himself out later in the season. So Herbert's got to be doing something right.
Yeah, and you're not seeing the like the soft tissue injuries that hold guys off for a long time. Like, they got Herbert back really quickly when he was having his foot injuries and his ankle issues. You haven't seen like the season-ending hamstring or calf or Achilles tendon injuries. It just seems like they're managing the day-to-day better, and guys are able to go out and play through some of the bumps and bruises, but they're not getting shut down and disappearing for the season the first time they get hurt, which, in my opinion, is a pretty big improvement over what we've seen in recent years.
I mean, the only mystery right now is Asante Samuel Jr. And to be completely honest, I mean, no disrespect, have they really missed him that much in the secondary? So it's one of those things where it'd be nice to have him. He's definitely a contributor, was a starter, but just the main injury that you're seeing of a guy who hasn't been on the field hasn't necessarily set them back that much. And overall, it just speaks to, outside of just Ben Herbert and his ability to keep guys on the field, more about the development of the other players. So it's a collective team effort amongst that staff.
And mentioning Asante Samuel Jr., we don't know anything. We don't know what's going on with him. All we know what everybody else knows, which is that he's got some kind of a shoulder injury. But just the way that Harbaugh has been talking about him, it's not too hard to kind of reach the conclusion that there might be something going on there outside of just a shoulder injury. They've been so tight-lipped with him, and references to his family and things like that and how they're dealing with it. It just, I don't know. It seems like there's something else going on there. And again, pure speculation. I don't know anything for sure, but I'm not sure that it's strictly an injury that's keeping him off the field at this point. What that is, I don't know, but it's a logical conclusion in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, to this point, they've been so hush hush about it. Generally, when you ask Jim about it, he's not going to give you a bunch of information. He'll say he's not qualified to answer it, but it feels like he's been talking around the injury and, like you said, alluding to something else. So I guess maybe we'll find out at some point. When he's on the sidelines, he looks engaged. He doesn't seem like he's dejected at all. So maybe it could be something beyond football, but again, pure speculation.
All right, next question. From Storm Norman 17, under the assumption that Ladd plays and with McDuffie most likely to line up against him, who would you be looking to attack and what ways would you go about attacking them, i.e. formations and plays? Greg?
I'm going to say, instead of just looking to attack a certain player, it's just how you scheme everything around it. So for instance, first off, you got to at least establish the threat of the run. So Gus and Kamani Vidal are probably going to be key this week. I would say, like, make the linebackers chase players to the perimeter. So use those wide receiver screens to QJ, Darius Davis, hell, maybe even Jalen Reagor. All of these are run after they catch guys who are pretty good in the open field. And then I would also think about using Gus Edwards as a fullback, maybe with Vidal dotting the I. That way you have the threat of Kamani in the flat, which could soften up things at the second level for Gus to break off some of those really quick hitting A-gap runs as your fullback. So to me, enough of those paper cuts, I mean, should put them in position for a few deep shots, but again, based on who your available receivers are going to be, those might have to come by way of like double moves to help gain separation. So for me, it's less about finding a person to attack and more so about, again, the overall scheme and setting up plays for later in the game, but also best utilizing your overall personnel so that no idea what's in my throat. It's weird. Sorry. So you can better overall use the personnel and attack the defense. Whoa.
Go ahead and get yourself a drink there, Craig. Yeah, so Craig came up with some good ideas there. I agree they have to run. They have to run the ball not just more effectively, but they have to be consistent and run it more in terms of quantity of touches. They've really gotten away from the run the last few weeks and kind of given up on it early. And they I think they have to be more physical and run the ball downhill. That'll help because it'll set up some play action and maybe free them up for some double moves, which is another way to attack man coverage. I would say that there are a couple players in the secondary in particular that you can attack if you want to scheme things up that way. One is their free safety, Brian Cook. He's struggled a little bit in coverage at times. He can be a little handsy at times. I think he's a guy that you could take advantage of in the middle of the field with double moves, maybe some crossers down the field, things like that. And then also Nazeeh Johnson and Chamari Connor are two more guys that I would try to attack. Johnson in particular has a passer rating of 103 when he's thrown at. He's allowed almost 15 yards per reception this year on, I think, somewhere around 30 catches. So he's been picked on quite a bit and has not responded to that very well. Chamari Connor's another one, passer rating of 91, giving up 10 yards a tackle, and he misses a lot of tackles, 15 missed tackles this year. So those are a couple guys that I think you can attack. I think, if Ladd is healthy, trying to spread them out, maybe getting him matched up on like a Drew Tranquil or a Leo Chenal or one of those guys, and trying to force the issue there could help. So those are some guys and some ways that you can go about attacking that defense. And also, I don't think there's really anybody in the secondary that you can't throw at. McDuffie is really good, very talented, but he's among the league leaders in pass interference penalties. I think he has 4 on the year so far. So he's a guy who I think can panic and get a little handsy. And I think if Ladd is healthy and he's ready to play, I think he's a guy who could have some success against McDuffie. So I don't think there's necessarily anyone that you have to avoid, but there are certainly a couple guys that you can scheme things up for and attack in certain ways.
So you're 100% right. This defense is not without its faults. It's not as good as it's been in years past, and a lot of that has to do with the younger secondary that they're trotting out there. But I'm trying not to fall into the trap again, because the common theme amongst the Chargers this year has been you can identify a team's weakness, but for some reason they play the Chargers and it suddenly becomes a strength. So I guess the other side to this is you look at what the Carolina Panthers did to them and you have hope, because if they can move the ball through the air with that quarterback and that wide receiving core, then you would assume the Chargers, even, they don't have the best core either. As far as wide receivers go, you would think that Herbert has some opportunities to pick them apart in the passing game as well. But a lot of that has to come on the backs, or at least, again, having the threat of the running game. So if they can get it going and have it be effective to some degree and not essentially give up on it, if it's not yielding the results that they want early on, they should be able to take advantage of that secondary, specifically later in the game.
Agreed. And just to kind of go back to the running game a little bit, I think this is a game where the Chargers have to stay committed to the run, even if it necessarily isn't pretty or isn't working consistently. I think this is a game where they have to run the ball 20 to 25 times between Vidal and Gus. I think to me, that's a sign that they're moving the football, they're having successful drives, and they're putting points on the board. I don't think you can get by with some of these jet sweeps and some of the ways that they've been doing the quick passes to Davis behind the line of scrimmage. I think they really need to run downhill between the tackles, just line up and see if they can beat the Chiefs man-to-man and generate some push in the running game. They've got to get back to that identity, or they're really going to struggle. I just really do not think that they can go into this game and expect to have Herbert throw the ball 40 times and expect that they're going to be able to block Dana and Chris Jones and Karlaftis. It's going to be a long day.
Recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it's a recipe for disaster against most teams, but that's going to be
especially this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tough road to hoe with the way things have been going.
And you gave up 5 sacks against the Falcons, who had 10 on the season before you played them. So I can only imagine.
I agree. Let's see. All right. This is from Triple JH equals Super Bowl. Why do you think Gus Edwards isn't consistently getting carries throughout the game? Against Atlanta, he was 5.3 yards per carry. Maybe Roman is trying to slow roll him into playing shape with all the time off. I'll go ahead and start this one. So I think there are probably a couple things going on. One is I think there's probably an element to this where they're trying to slowly get him back into playing shape. Two, I think they've gotten themselves into some situations the last couple weeks where they just couldn't afford to stick with the run. They had to throw the ball more just to try to put some points on the board and generate some movement in the offense. And two, I also think a big thing with this is Gus is kind of limited as a running back, or at least they're limited in terms of what they can do with him when he's in there. They've run with him off tackle at times, but he's really a between the tackles, downhill, one cut and go kind of runner. And he's not a guy who's going to beat guys to the edge. If he starts having to bounce plays outside or race to the edge, it's just not going to end very well. So I think, they've got to get him going downhill and open up some holes for him so that he can lean on those linebackers in the middle of the defense, wear them down, and set up some play action.
Yeah, this definitely isn't Roman's first rodeo with Gus, having spent time with him in Baltimore, so he knows how to utilize him. And I agree, he probably is still working into game shape, but to be completely honest, it's a little confusing because his style of running fits Greg Roman's brand to a T. And it feels like even in these games where he started to get rolling, I think he was averaging over 5 yards a carry in the Falcons game, and maybe even the week prior to that. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but he's been back since week 10. And ironically, since then, his high in carries has only been 10. And that includes the last 6 quarters of football since the Chargers haven't had J.K. Dobbins when they lost him in the Ravens game. For me, it's been less about the overall quantity and the situational use that's been concerning for me. Like we've talked about this a million times, like in short yardage situations, this is your downhill thumper, and yet you basically put in what amounts to so far a career special teams player in his stead. And some of these gotta have it, carry moments on short yardage and down and distance. So if you're going to use him in the way that he's most effective. And in those short yardage situations, you want that thumper in there carrying the ball. I will say though, if there's a time for him to get really going, he's been back 3-4 weeks at this point. This is probably the week to do it. And Vidal's had more time in there with the ones as far as the rotation's gone since, at least a week now, since JK has been out 2 weeks, basically. So I would expect them to have a better combination of those two, with definitely Gus being your lead back. But if he's going, he's rolling for 4 and 5 yards a clip, you got to allow him to keep going, because that's the type of back that Gus is. He gets stronger as the game goes. Again, Roman knows this. And in a game like against the Ravens, I understand that they fell behind, so he wasn't as much of an option. But right now, with your offense being as limited as it is, and your defense playing really, really a great brand of ball as far as turnovers, specifically last week, you probably want to try to shorten these games and keep some of these higher power offenses off of the field, which means longer drives and controlling the ball in time of possession. And Gus is going to be pivotal in that.
Absolutely. Got to get him going. It's going to start with 2 and 3 yard carries. But if you continue to feed him, and we've talked about this a million times, if you continue to chip away with the running game, those 3 yard carries eventually turn into 5 yard carries, and then pretty soon they're 8 yard carries. And you're not going to get the explosive running plays with him, but you are going to wear down the middle of that defense. They're going to be tired. They're going to be beat up. And that's just going to make the passing game easier, especially with play action fake. If you're setting yourself up with, 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3, that just opens up the playbook. But if you're 2nd and 8, 3rd and 7, that doesn't open up the playbook quite as much. So They got to keep teams honest. They got to protect Justin. They got to wear down the defense.
And let's please keep Haskins off of the field on 4th down. Just stop doing it.
Yeah, we're there. We're at that point of the show where we kind of have to let's just start begging now. No more Haskins on short yardage. I don't care where it is on the field. Particularly, don't do it in the red zone. But let's just not go there anymore, please. I would rather some sort of a zone read or an RPO and let Justin run the ball on short yardage situations than continue to put Haskins out there.
And I've said this a million times already. People are probably tired of me saying it, but if you're going to do it, at least mix it up. If you're going to put him in there at fullback, every team knows what's coming. fake the fullback dive and flip the ball to the outside. 9 times out of 10, edge rushers are probably going to crash down thinking that you're running the ball up the A gap, and you'll probably be able to walk it in on the perimeter with one of your backs. Or, fake it handoff with Herbert and allow him to keep it. Same thing. Similarly, if you're going to do it, at least, put another wrinkle on top of it. Don't continuously do the same thing. I would much rather have him not be in the game at all, but if you're going to keep doing it, you got to switch it up at least a little bit.
Yeah, and some naked boot plays where you get Herbert out into the flat with a chance to get to the edge and make a play on short yardage. That could help too. But we just got to keep force feeding the ball to Haskins in crucial downs. It's just not working, and it's really frustrating that they're going out of their way to give him the ball in those situations. So that's our bitch session. That's our anti-Haskins session for the week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We can move on now.
I'm going to keep pounding the table until it stops.
Next question. Oh, we're going to move on to tweets now. So we're moving on to bad tweets. We actually didn't get any Twitter questions this week. So moving on to bad tweets. This says, Dan Campbell is just Staley with good coordinators to bail him out. Greg, what do you think?
I couldn't think of any two more different individuals. There's nothing about Brandon Staley that reminds me of Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell never, well, I'm not going to say Staley wasn't self-proclaimed genius guru. He was anointed that. Dan Campbell is a guy's guy who just is an overall football player. He's essentially the face of their franchise who's a solid motivator. He doesn't have to get up there and talk to you with all the X's and O's. He knows how to be a GM of a football team from a coaching standpoint or overseeing everything. Not the physical GM, but what was Brandon Staley? It feels like, we call him a snake oil salesman. Got up there every week, said all the right stuff, never really took accountability for anything. And I mean, as long as it was working, it was motivating, but it wasn't necessarily like he stood in front of a podium and made you feel like, oh yeah, I will run through a wall for this guy. There's absolutely nothing about the two of them that are alike. And I think it's kind of a disservice to Dan Campbell. I would say it's insulting to basically put him on the same tier as Brandon Staley. Yeah, you definitely want to have other coordinators that are very good at what they do. Like any coaching staff has that. Any really good coach will tell you that. He's probably only as good as the guys that he's working with. But yeah, let's not do that with Dan Campbell. Dude took a franchise that was bottom of the barrel and has turned them into a Super Bowl contender in just 4 years, 3-4 years. So where's Brandon Staley right now? Oh yeah. I mean, he's basically dragging San Francisco down into the pits of hell with him, and not our problem anymore. So I don't really care.
Yeah. I mean, look, Campbell took a team, a franchise that was a bigger joke than the Chargers for decades, like basically since the 80s or early 90s. Ever since Barry left, they've been a complete disaster and a joke, and he turned them around in a couple of years. And he has a locker room full of guys who believe in him, who would eat glass for him, who would run through a wall, fill in whatever cliche you want. That locker room believes in him, and they fight hard for him. And the way they win games is just so much fun to watch. So Staley was, I think, more of a gimmick, and I think Campbell's the real deal. That guy just knows what he's doing. That's why this is in the bad tweet section, because it's pretty fucking dumb, to be honest with you.
Well, you know what else? You're never going to catch Dan Campbell in a downward dog position pregame. That'll more than likely never happen. And it tells you all you need to know. Brandon Staley apparently has no shame whatsoever. That will always be an image embedded in my head. It's burned in there. That guy was our head coach. There was nothing more embarrassing than that. And I feel like people excused it. And now that you think about it in hindsight, what an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, think about when they made the trade and they traded Stafford away and they took Goff in return, and everybody was laughing at them and mocking them. And they found a way to win with a guy who basically the entire league had given up on. And not just win with him, but they've turned him into definitely, I would say like a top 10 quarterback at this point. He's playing some really good football.
Well, during that opening presser, the introductory presser, everyone got a really good laugh about the biting kneecaps thing, but it makes a lot of sense now, right? Because this is a team that's really rough and tumble, and they've taken on his image. So now, not so funny anymore. Makes perfect sense.
And they have been ravaged by injuries, and they're still
Exactly.
winning games. They've got so much talent and so much money on IR, and they just keep finding ways to win. And that, if that's not the hallmark of a great NFL head coach, I don't know what is.
Leadership matters.
It does. All right. Next tweet. You want to go ahead and read this one, Craig?
Oh, hold on, let me blow it up on my screen really quickly. So this comes via Jordan Schultz. UCLA and OC Eric Bieniemy have parted ways, source confirms. And this person says that they should poach him. Now, I've had multiple conversations with people about this in the past, and the question still stands. What exactly does he do other than, I would say, hold players accountable? I'm confused. I still don't know. So now there's an opportunity for him to go and be the play caller at UCLA. That hasn't turned out well. And this is what his resume consists of. You were on a staff with Andy Reid, and no one knew exactly what it was you did. And you didn't call plays. Andy handled that. And whenever asked what he did, people just kind of talked around it for years. So you want to now take this, which had, I don't think UCLA is one of the top offenses in college football. I haven't kept up with them specifically, but this almost feels like I'm still being paid, so I'm going to go chill out. They don't want me anymore, and hopefully maybe KC will take me back. Please call me. Just bring me here so that I can have something else to put on my mantle. I can show that I'm participating with another team and maybe take some unwarranted credit. So no disrespect to the man. He maybe has a talent to hold people accountable. Maybe. I just don't know what he does as far as a play call is concerned. And I don't think you'd be getting much more from him than you do with Greg Roman, if not less.
Yeah. So first of all, I believe UCLA was 104th in offense in the country this year.
Sweet.
This is a guy who 4 years ago was one of the most popular names in the NFL, and he was one of the more popular names in the NFL for head coaching jobs for 2 cycles, if I'm not mistaken. Could not get a job. There were rumors that came out that he was waiting for quote unquote the perfect job, but that never found him. He winds up going to Washington and sucking miserably. He gets fired from Washington after, I think, 1 year, if I'm not mistaken. Then what happens? His buddy, Deshaun Foster, gets the job at UCLA, and in his own words, Deshaun's like my little brother, so I went to go help out my little brother. Translation, I couldn't get a real job, so I'm going to go hang out with my buddy on the sideline at UCLA. And then he has this experience in 1 year at UCLA. This is now 2 failed stints in college where he was a miserable play caller and had no success. He did not have success without Andy Reid in Washington. I think we kind of know what this is. And I agree with you. And I said it for years. What does he do? It's Andy Reid's playbook. Andy Reid calls the plays. He designs the plays. Maybe Bieniemy had some input in the play calls, but it's still Andy Reid making those play calls. So I never knew what Eric Bieniemy did. I don't really care to know what Eric Bieniemy does. I want no part of this. I don't see how bringing him in helps this offense with the struggles it's having. It's just bad all the way around. So yeah, hard pass on Eric Bieniemy. I think that ship has long since sailed. Let somebody else experiment with that crap. We'll just deal with the struggles we're having with Greg Roman right now.
Here's the thing, right? So your resume has to say something about you. What was the biggest red flag to me is that he was a play caller under Andy Reid and couldn't really find a job anywhere else. If a recommendation from Andy Reid doesn't really do it, what will? Now, there was an opportunity in Washington. Of course, that didn't pan out. And now you're seeing the results at UCLA. So the question becomes, what do you have to stand on to prove that you deserve an opportunity in the NFL to be a play caller for a team that's supposed to be taken seriously? Again, I think that he has a rapport that he builds with players. They respect him because he'll hold their feet to the fire. But other than that, I mean, that's not enough for an OC role. I mean, being a motivator is great, but ultimately, if you're a play caller, you have to be someone that can make a difference in that regard. Otherwise, you're just taking up a spot on a staff. And I mean, again, I just need someone to tell me exactly what he did in Kansas City. That is the $1 million question. I saw him on the sideline with the play call sheet over his mouth like he was doing something. Maybe he was relaying what he thought should be run to Andy Reid. And then Andy would either yay, nay it, veto it, maybe take it and adjust it. I don't know. But it doesn't feel like he's someone that is in a position to where he can be a primary play caller. Maybe he can be a co-OC somewhere, but I don't think he can be a full-time guy.
That was what he was doing, by the way. There were reports that they had the word they used was collaborative play calling system, but it was he would come up with a play and recommend it to Andy, and then Andy would make the call. And they would do all that and still get the play in time to run it and have it be successful. And sometimes the Chargers can't even get one play in before the clock runs out. So I guess he's got that working for him.
Sounds like what Joe Brady was doing at LSU. I can't remember who the other offensive coordinator was, but he played kind of that co-OC role, and they sat next to each other in the booth and just kind of bounced off of one another as far as play calling is concerned. So, yeah, maybe co-OC, but again, just not the guy.
Yep. All right. Next. So this is from Aziz Al-Shair, and he says, if you want me to be your villain, I'll be your villain. See you soon. And actually, I think the picture of the Joker here is pretty fitting. Could you miss the point? Could you possibly miss the point any more than he does here? Could you possibly lose the plot any more than he does here? He tried to take Trevor Lawrence's head off. He incited a fight, continued to incite the fight, gets suspended for 3 games. He's got the league and pretty much every commentator who talks about football in any format basically making him out to be the devil on the football field. And he's making a joke of it. I mean, they're questioning his character. They're questioning his intentions on the field. And he thinks it's funny. What am I missing?
This falls into that bucket of inability to read the room. I felt for him initially, like when I'm watching the play, because this has always been my argument about like QBs, giving themselves up. Patrick Mahomes does that whole cutesy thing where he pretends like he's going to slide or go out of bounds, and you just kind of have to let him do it. Otherwise, out of fear that you're going to hit him late and get a penalty. This wasn't necessarily that. I mean, you can have your opinions on the play, but the problem here is that now you're putting a target on yourself, and moving forward, you're probably going to get the Derwin James treatment. Now, Derwin never went this far, but if you want to proclaim yourself the villain, now, absolutely, every single game you play in, the refs are going to be looking for the slightest thing from you from here on out, because now it looks like you don't really care. Now, I saw that I don't know if he tweeted it or something. He made somewhat of an apology about the hit to Trevor Lawrence, but this says something completely different. Like, yeah, if you feel like people are judging you, you have to get past the point that you're a public figure. You play football. You're a celebrity of sorts. People are going to have their opinions. You don't have to feed into it. This almost feels like it's a little different. Like LeBron James, when he took on the whole "I'm the villain if you want me to be the villain" role when he went to Miami, it didn't really suit him. Well, Aziz seems to want to be that guy really and truly, and I don't know where he thinks this is going to benefit him. Again, all you're doing is putting more eyes on you moving forward. Probably start getting fines for things that are lesser than this, and you'll wonder why. And we will always have this tweet to reference.
Yeah, this is just stupid. I mean, talk about putting a target on your back. There's already one there, clearly, based on, I don't know if you heard them read the letter that he got from the league on ESPN earlier in the week, but it was pretty strongly worded. So they already consider him a repeat offender and a problem. They're saying that he's been talked to multiple times by the league, continues to play this way. Just not smart all the way around. Just he's going to be a target like Bosa has been, like Derwin has been. He's not going to get away with anything anymore. So, and that's obviously going to hurt his team. So he's hurting himself and his team. It's just all around stupid.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question. Or next tweet. Oh, this one's a good one. This will get a laugh. Want proof Telesco knows what he's doing? This guy was picked up off the street. And this guy is Kayvon Chasen, who comes up with a sack on the video that's in this tweet.
Oh, God.
Go ahead, Craig.
Has this person not seen a Kansas City Chiefs game this season? Because the weakest link on that offense are both of their offensive tackles, so much so that they had to go sign a guy who tore his ACL last year and hasn't played all season long. But, oh, by the way, magically will apparently be starting this week of all weeks in DJ Humphrey against the Chargers. So, yay. Kayvon Chasen, that's your proof. Someone who's been an abject bust in the NFL to this point, beating another bust in the NFL. I mean, bust on bust crime. Cool. If you think that's a successful pickup, then I guess your standards aren't very high. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it just tells me that either you're reaching to prove a point or you just have not been paying attention to the Kansas City Chiefs' woes on the offensive line. They had to move a left guard to start at left tackle because the tackle play was so bad. But hey, some people just feel the need to tweet stuff for attention. Maybe it's engagement farming. Who the hell knows? But do your thing either way.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about a 2-10 Raiders team that started the season with 2 quarterbacks, which really means they started the season with no quarterback. The same GM who hired Antonio Pierce, who is flaming and crashing and burning. I mean, that organization is a mess. He got one thing right, and that was drafting Brock Bowers. Pretty much everything else he did last offseason has been a complete disaster. So, and Raiders fans should start to see any time now the effect that Tom Telesco has on the depth of your team or lack thereof. That team is fucked. And I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm going to watch Antonio Pierce burn into the ground because fuck that guy.
I knew it was coming. Every chance you get, and I don't blame you.
Every chance I get.
Shout out ASU, by the way.
Yes. They're having a fun season. It's been awesome. Unfortunately, their best wide receiver is out for the Big 12 championship game, so it's going to be a little rough. But I wasn't expecting more than 2 or 3 wins, so it's already been a successful season. All right. Well, that's it for the questions and the bad tweets. So why don't we take a few minutes? If anybody's got some questions, go ahead and fire them up. We'll take, 3 or 4 questions here, and then we'll call it a night.
I think we may have had a few super chats, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, we had 2. So the first question is from Aldo Vicente. Thank you very much for the donation. We appreciate it. He says, Alt is amazing, but what if we traded back for Bowers instead and just kept Pipkins at left tackle and Salyer at right guard and then still got Ladd in the second? Sorry if already been asked. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
I see where you're going with this, but Justin Herbert will probably be dead by now. I'm sorry. We've seen enough of Trey Pipkins, right? We saw enough of Pipkins at tackle. We've seen enough of him at guard. He had a decent season a couple of years ago, which made him seem like maybe he'd be a serviceable tackle. But the way that this offense is performing right now, could you imagine dropping Justin Herbert back 25 plus times a game with him protecting his blind side? Alt's been a godsend. I think he's leading the AFC in Pro Bowl votes for tackles. So great. But no, I mean, I understand wanting Brock Bowers, for everything that he's doing this year. And it's, again, if you want to give hats off to Tom Telesco, it's making the, the pick of the draft at that point in time. I guess maybe for him it makes sense. It was kind of like a no miss proposition. I know a lot of people and how they feel about tight ends in the first round early, but Brock Bowers just kind of looked like he was going to be one of those standout players. Ultimately, this is not something that I would have been down with because, again, we want Pipkins gone, not Herbert. And if he was starting at left tackle, we would probably be looking at a situation where some of the dings that Herbert has taken so far this year would be much worse. So hard pass for me on that one.
So I have a couple of thoughts on this, and I'm going to say again, thank you for the donation. You're going to take a little bit of a beating here, but so I'm a little worried about this scenario because, like Craig said, if Pipkins is playing left tackle, that means Herbert is dead. But apparently, Rashawn Slater died too, because why in the hell would you have Pipkins playing left tackle with a healthy and breathing Rashawn Slater? Because even 5% of Rashawn Slater is better than 100% of Trey Pipkins. So I'm not sure what happened to Rashawn Slater in this situation, but the way the brain is working on this one, buddy, not a fan. So yeah, let's keep both Herbert and Slater alive. We could have had the conversation about Pipkins at right tackle, but even that I'm not a big fan of. Let's just get him the hell out of here. But the idea of trading back for Bowers, not a bad one, depending on where you have to get him. It'd be nice to have a tight end like that. But then if they trade back for Bowers, they're probably not trading up for Ladd. So it's just a whole different scenario.
Yeah, again, I don't even know why my brain didn't register the all-pro left tackle not being a part of this equation somehow. But yeah, I think I saw Pipkins and my brain farted, like maybe no disrespect. Although you took me somewhere and I don't know, my brain seized for a second, completely forgot about Slater. Maybe you did too. But yeah, let's keep the all-pro left tackle where he is.
Yeah, let's not kill Slater. We like Slater. Slater good, Pipkins bad, and we'll just leave it at that.
Putting it mildly.
So I see a question popping up here, and this is a good one, and I've addressed this, but I'm going to address it again just because it's near and dear to my heart. Is fuck AP because of the ASU thing? Yes, it's very much because of the ASU thing. If you didn't already know, I am an ASU grad. I hated the Herm Edwards hire. They brought in Antonio Pierce as the defensive coordinator, and while he was successful as a DC here and he helped recruit, apparently everything he did was dirty. And he not only spearheaded an illegal recruiting scandal, he also shamed people who spoke out against it. And then he left before everything blew up. So yeah, fuck him. Here's one that's coming up too. I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to, but do you guys know what's up with Michael McLean? I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Extra Dip.
No.
I don't know if you're implying I really have no idea what's going on with Michael. We did that one show with him, but no clue. So if somebody wants to throw something in there, please, in the chat, please do, but not a clue.
Yeah, Mike's a good guy. I hope everything's okay. I'm not exactly sure what that's alluding to, but yeah, I haven't heard anything either.
Let's see here. They said Michael hasn't posted anything since week 4.
Wow.
Which is a little surprising.
It is, very much so. Hope all is well with him.
Let's see. What else do we have here? And this one's timely. From Curtis Davis. He says, Laviska Shenault thoughts. Will he play, be ready? What do you think, Craig?
I'm curious about this because Shenault is like Dollar General Deebo Samuel, if you want to put it that way. He has a similar type game and you can utilize him on special teams also, but then you kind of have this hodgepodge of receivers who are like get the ball to him in space and allow them to create after the catch, he falls into like that mold. And now you have a bunch of those dudes, but he hasn't been able to succeed where he's been prior to. I mean, I think the Jags drafted him in the second round. Then from there to Seattle, I mean, dude's only been in the league like 4 years, and he hasn't been able to make a huge impact. Like, I mean, the Jaguars aren't a great team, so there's that. And the fact that he wasn't able to find his way really onto the field in Seattle, I mean, they have a pretty decent receiver core 1 through 3, so maybe he just couldn't find his niche there. I wonder what the plan is for him. Do they think that they can develop him further? Do they feel like they can utilize him this year? I'm curious because, again, he has a similar skill set to like at least 2 other receivers you already have on the team. So I'm not exactly certain what the plan is.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't think he plays this week. It might be a couple weeks before he plays. I don't know what he was doing before they signed him. I assume he was on the streets looking for a job. So probably not ready.
I think he was in Seattle, right?
Was he?
Was he cut? Did they sign him off of their practice squad? I know he was with Seattle last, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure where he was. I'm sure we could look it up and figure it out. But I wonder if they see him as more of like a Cordero Patterson type player, and they're thinking they might use him as more of a running back to help carry the load with Gus and Vidal, because they don't seem to think that they can have Vidal out on the field all that much or give him that many touches. So if they want to run the ball 20 to 25 times, they kind of need 3 people to do that. And maybe they're just thinking Shenault can give them, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 carries a game, maybe run some screens and help create some offense for them. I don't know. I don't think he's a guy who's going to separate a whole lot. I don't think he's going to help you with your man coverage issues as they've been happening. So we'll have to see what they see in him. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to assume that they're looking to feed him the football as a running back if he's on the field.
Now that you say that, yeah, Cordero Patterson's probably a better comp. Even you want to throw like a Josh Cribbs in there, a guy like that, someone that can be moved around, whether it's on special teams, give him reps out of the backfield. I mean, the dude's 6'1", 220 pounds. So, I mean, that's by wide receiver standards, a pretty big body guy. And he's another one of those, make it happen after you get the ball in his hands, guys. So, yeah, probably a lot of, if they're not going to hand the ball off to him a ton, definitely get him out into the flats. Since he does have that experience as a wide receiver, technically he is a wide receiver. You can get him out in routes in a few different creative ways. How much of a downfield threat he'd be, not so certain about that because, again, not somebody who creates a lot of separation, but he is a bigger body and he's physical. And you have a wide receiver that isn't that. So maybe they look at him as an opportunity to throw some of those down the field passes to someone who may be a little bit better in contested catch situations, because apparently DJ Chark is still not a real person.
He definitely is not. All right, last question. This is from Glenn Gordo. Is this a concern? Many first-year Chargers coaches have brought our team to the playoffs. They eventually fall off. Is Harbaugh different?
Glenn. Yeah. No, real question. How familiar are you with Jim Harbaugh? I'm curious. And I'm not saying that to be funny. Just because the history would say that that's not something you really have to worry about. The guy has success practically everywhere he goes. So it's part of the reason why I would imagine the Span Eye decided that they were going to shell out the cash to bring him in, because it's something that they haven't done in the past. They've hired these on the fringe coaches or new, hot names or just cheap guys overall in general. So Harbaugh's got the track record. I don't feel like this is going to be a situation where he falls off, because that's just not really what he does. He builds programs, he builds teams, and he has success. So I don't see why things would be any different now. Well, I don't think it's going to be an issue moving forward.
Yeah, he wins everywhere he goes, and he's taken over terrible, just abysmal programs everywhere he's been at the collegiate level and the NFL level, and turned them into winners. And that's just what he does. He's built a culture. He comes with a plan. And especially in this case, which is really exciting for me, is he's aligned with the front office, which he wasn't when he was successful in San Francisco. So I think this is a situation where they're just laying the foundation, and what we're seeing right now, in my opinion, is a head coach and a coaching staff in general that is elevating what I would say is a pretty mid roster. Um, they don't have a ton of depth. They don't have a ton of playmakers on offense. Even their defense, once you get past like Bosa and Mac, it's honestly a no-name defense. They don't really have anybody at all three levels of the defense for the most part. So this is a situation where they're elevating a mid roster, and this, as the roster gets better, they're just going to keep building momentum. And I think you're looking at 11, 12, 13, 14 wins a year moving forward as they set the program and the culture in place and they get the talent they want to play. So I'm not the least bit worried about Harbaugh. I just think that the league is catching up to what they're doing, and they don't have the talent to overcome that at the moment.
Putting it plainly, winners win.
Amen to that. All right, everybody. That is the last question. So I want to thank everybody for coming in on a Friday. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. I know we enjoyed doing it with you. So everybody have a great Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you back here Sunday night for After Hours. Go Chargers. Have a good night.
Salute.